Coming. There we go. So, very good morning to everybody. Thank you very much for joining what I'm very excited to put on offer this morning with Elizabeth from We Are Ludo. And we are going to be talking all about what managers can do to support employees going through the menopause. So I'll introduce Elizabeth in 1 second, but just for those listening, just as a reminder, this LinkedIn Live series is for managers. So whatever stage of your career you're at, this is about demystifying subjects, giving you kind of tips and hints, and to enable you to look after and support your employees to thrive and ultimately perform better in their roles. So there's a comments on here. So if you've got any comments, then please, if you're listening live, please do drop your comments in there, and we'll do our best to answer that. So Elizabeth, thank you so much for joining us this morning. Yeah, absolutely fascinated for this conversation. Really looking forward to it. Maybe we could start with, We Are Ludo. Who you are, what you do, your background, how you've got to where you are today.
Yeah, of course. Hello, everybody. Good morning. I'm Elizabeth. I have had a career of 25 years in HR. And my last corporate role, just to give a second on that, I was at Tapestry, that owned Coach, Kate Spade and Stuart Wiseman, as their VP of HR in Europe, Global Head of Wellbeing, and part of their Global DEI committee. And I've got 3 kids who are 20, 17 and 6. And I guess bringing all those component parts together is what had me set up Ludo. Because I really saw a gap, I suppose, of where we could support companies, HR leaders and line managers on how to truly drive a culture of wellbeing and inclusion in the workplace. And our first module was all around maternity. And then we launched our module on the menopause next, which is what I'm excited to talk and share with you a bit more about today.
And when did you set Ludo up? How long has the business been running?
Well, I came out of corporate 2.5 years ago, and we went live with our first module on maternity just over a year ago. And then we launched our menopause module just a couple of months ago. So it's quite fresh. Okay. So the first year was really about just flushing out whether we had a proper product and was it going to work, and really running focus groups and checking in. So we've been going about a year and a half.
Excellent. Well, congratulations on setting it up. The thing is, you've been the other side of the table, haven't you? So you totally understand where the support is needed. So that's fantastic. Okay, so the perimenopause and the menopause. Let's start with that. Why is it so high profile right now?
I think because it comes from a much bigger move in the workplace to think. If you think about where we've come from over the last few years, there's been more awareness around mental health, more awareness around diversity, equity and inclusion. And we are beginning to realize how important it really is for us to pay attention to this. And it's always been important, but I think it's becoming more and more on the radar for us to understand that actually, whoever you are, whatever your background, whatever you're struggling with, whatever you're brilliant at, we welcome you in the workplace. You might be neurodiverse, you may be, from a different cultural background, but all of these people bring fantastic, incredible creativity and knowledge and brilliance into a workplace, and a culturally diverse workplace and a workplace full of different opinions and diversity is really powerful. And when you add menopause into that, the reason this is becoming more of a factor, I suppose, for companies to pay attention to is because we know that women reach a certain age and they hit the perimenopause. And we also know we have a big gender pay gap problem, and we have a problem of diversity in the workplace. Women are still heavily underrepresented. So if you think about that bigger lens of driving a truly diverse and inclusive workforce, it is really important we pay attention to supporting women through that journey to have them retained in the workplace and keep that brilliance and gender diversity that we need.
Yeah, that's fascinating, because I understand that we're now culturally that we genuinely are celebrating difference, aren't we? And the whole inclusion piece. And I've never actually linked kind of the rise in the profile of or the how much people are talking about perimenopause and menopause. And actually it's just because culturally we celebrate difference, and it's just another way of kind of one size doesn't fit all. We're all different. We've all got different things going on. Okay, that's great. And obviously you've got these amazing Meno warriors out there, and sort of documentaries being shown and all the rest of it that's going on outside of the workplace as well, which is almost demystifying it as well, isn't it? And making it just a little bit more okay to talk about.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah,
because this is not a new thing. I mean, this is women have been.
But my mother's generation never would have talked about it. So the fact that it is now a subject that has less taboo surrounding it, I think, is a very good thing.
Yeah, no, 100%. Okay, brilliant. So let's explore a little bit of the challenges. So if we can look at it from the employee perspective first. So I think CIPD recently released some stats that 3/5 of women say that the menopause has a negative impact on work. But you've got some weightier stats, haven't you? We've checked before, and you mentioned about the number of people that have left the workforce last year due to menopause.
Yeah, there was an article released earlier this year with a study that was done by Koru Kids, where they did a huge survey and looked at feedback from different women and said this year, based on feedback, we expect 1 million women to drop out the workforce in the UK within the age of where they would hit the menopause. And that is terrifying. That is just huge. That's a massive number. And there is so much work to be done. And when we dig into that a little bit further, the stats show a separate report. 1 in 4 women suffer with very severe symptoms of the menopause. Okay. 2 in 4, so 50%, have some symptoms, and 1 in 4 will probably sail through and they'll be all right. But if we're saying that 25% of the population that are going through the menopause are suffering with severe symptoms, that could be anything from very severe debilitating anxiety, which could stop women going to work. There are stories of women who cannot leave their house. They are struggling that badly. They can, there's stories of really poor mental health and challenges that women are facing where they really end up in a place where they don't recognize themselves. And you can imagine how huge that is in terms of how they feel about their job and how they feel about their work, and very, very challenging for them. So then you've got the other 50% that may be struggling with some symptoms, and it's probably a good time to say it's not just hot flushes. I think we're all fed up with being menopause means you're a walking hot flush. No. There are 48 symptoms of the menopause, and many of them have got nothing to do with hot flushes, and many women never have a hot flush but have other symptoms. But women are dealing with these symptoms every day, so this is something that's happening for them, and we need to be aware of that and just have an awareness. We don't need to understand. We just need to be aware that that's what women are dealing with.
And I think as well, when you look at 1 million women of that age coming out of the workforce, there's a significance about that age, isn't it? Because these are women that are in their prime of their careers. Yes. And actually, if we look at that 50%, so that's interesting. So 50% have got some symptoms there, but those symptoms, I think based on what you just said there, you've got some real sort of 25% extreme symptoms, which I just feel so sorry for that 25%. That's really, really tough. With the 25% where they have some symptoms, that has got to be very manageable with the right support in an organization, right? The right support from the manager, because it could just be that actually it's their confidence. So you mentioned anxiety before, but sort of a mild down, sort of a diluted form of that might just be confidence or something. So if you're a manager and you've got some people in your team where their confidence looks like it's struggling, it's recognizing that, isn't it? And I think can you sort of put some perspective on it from the employees' perspective there? So they're struggling a bit, but it's not they don't have to bring it up. They're kind of cracking on, they're muddling through. What would they appreciate at that point? What do you say to managers that could be what would the woman want? If you're the voice of the woman, what would you want to hear?
I think that there's 2 parts of this. I'm going to do a very quick shameless plug to my tech platform, which is that we've got resource for the menopause for employees. So if employees need help, they can look at it without telling their company that they're looking at it. So they've got access to it. And the reason why I bring that up is because many women won't feel confident. Most won't. I mean, imagine the likelihood of you going to your manager and saying, I'm really struggling, I'm in the perimenopause. I mean, that conversation would be very difficult to have. So having signposting and resource for that woman who's struggling is really important for companies where they can provide it. And, you know, we do that at Ludo. But the part for the manager is, and this is really massive for me, and we talk about this when we do our workshops, which is that for managers, it's very important to catch your own bias. Now, you might have a woman on your team who you, through your own lens, perceive to be perimenopausal age, and she is struggling with confidence, or she's got brain fog, or she's, you know, complaining of having headaches. And you might think in your own bias, oh God, she's in the menopause, you know, and even if you thought that thought in your head, that will then be a lens and a filter by which you are managing that woman. And I invite all managers just to check in on their bias. And this isn't just about menopause. This is everything. You know, we all have bias. And incidentally, if anyone ever says to you, I don't have any bias, that's not true. We all have it. It comes from our values, our upbringing, our belief, and many other reasons. And just pay attention to what you might be thinking, and creating a safe space for that woman to be okay without having to use the word menopause or talk about what's going on for her is a really powerful thing for a manager. What do I mean by that? Let's take your example of a woman who's struggling with her confidence, and she says to her manager, I'm really nervous about presenting this afternoon. I don't know. First, point one, check your bias. You know, are you as a manager presuming this is relating to the menopause? If it is, can you just switch that off, please, for a second? Then you might say, what can I do to help? Ask a really open question. Think of it from a coaching mindset. Ask a really open question. What can I do to help? Now, that woman might say, nothing, I don't know, you know, or dismiss it. But it's important that you've offered your resource. And if they do dismiss it, say, who else in the team might be able to assist? Or what can I give you now to give you 10 minutes to go and regroup, or whatever it might be? And she might say, I just need to go and walk around the block. Okay, go, just go for it. And just be very open to whatever that woman needs without having to use the word menopause symptoms or having any kind of bias about what's going on for her.
So are you saying then, so from a manager perspective, is to almost just to deal with what you've got in front of you, as opposed to labeling it with
absolutely
menopause.
Totally.
Okay.
I mean, imagine a scenario where you've got a man in front of you, let's say, who has been all over the shop all morning because he's blimmin' knackered and he's been dealing with something at home and he's had a sleepless night because he's had an insomnia night. I don't know, whatever it might be. Now, if that man is, you know, unfocused that morning, then he's unfocused and he needs support. Do we need to know why? You know, do we need to dig into why and really understand? Now, if that man wants to come forward and say, I had a terrible night, I'm dealing with an aged father, whatever it might be, then great, let's have the conversation. But whatever is in front of you, as you describe, as a manager who's driving a true culture of well-being and inclusion, it's about asking the right questions to support that talent who is sat in front of you and help them in that moment.
So can I ask a question about, so I spent years of my career training groups of people managers how to use coaching techniques to drive the performance of their teams. And I believe, like, of the sort of hundreds of thousands of managers that I've had the privilege of working with, I'd say 99.9% of them have got real positive intent. They want to do a really, really good job. Confident, and the confidence as a manager, I think, is not spoken about enough as well. And, you know, because as human beings, we tend to avoid things that we're not very confident in doing. So if you've got a manager and we're saying, right, just, you know, ask, so they've turned the noise off about the menopause, so I'm just going to deal with this. I think it is that, or we've spoken about this before, so I'm aware of that. I'm just going to, if you ask a question, how can I help? What can we provide managers with that they feel confident? Because you've got to go into that not knowing what the response is going to be coming back, right? And that can be terrifying for some people. I joke, but I think, like, for husbands, right, or for partners, or for kids, or whatever, you know, it can be quite a terrifying question to say, how can I help? So what can we do for managers to support managers, to enable them to feel more confident in you know, being kind and thoughtful and actually just a decent human being, by asking those kind of questions? How can we equip them?
I think it's bringing back the bias piece quickly. It's just being very open to what the answer might be. And it might not be something that you understand or that you think is the right answer. And what I mean by that, to make it real, is let's say the person in front of you says, do you know what? I just need to go and sit in a dark room for 20 minutes. You might think, what the actual, like, what are you on about? You know, that response would be the wrong response from the manager. You know, even if you don't understand or it feels like a weird request, I think being able to facilitate that person and say, okay, go take 20 minutes, you know, go and sit in the meeting room at the end of the corridor, nobody's in there, shut the door. Just be open to what the response might be and don't judge. You know, everybody's different. They require different things. I mean, we're talking about it in the office situation, but this could be a good moment just to bring in more of the challenges around companies, not retail hospitality, you know, supermarkets where you've got to be in work, but offices where you've got this hybrid approach. I think this is an interesting one, and it's come up relating to the menopause more recently, that there are women who've been saying, by being at home or by being in a different environment, I am able to manage my symptoms more effectively. You've then got line managers who are dealing with the situation over Zoom, for example, you know, and having to deal with maybe even more what they might perceive to be bizarre requests, or, you know, different behaviors, or women being off unwell. And I think just being mindful of how that woman wants to work is really helpful. And now I realize there are cultural behaviors in companies of what hybrid or the new world looks like for work. I understand all of that. But just where you might have a woman that says, you know what, for the next month, I've got some personal stuff going on. I know we work in the office 2 days a week or 3 days a week. I'd like it to be 2, please.
Yeah.
I think just paying attention to those kind of conversations. I mean, you probably saw the article yesterday. It was all over the press, the menopause yesterday, around the NHS saying where possible, they're going to make adaptations in the workplace, you know, fans in the staff rooms, and to be able to help women if they're feeling hot, etc., etc. Adaptations can happen in many different ways.
Yeah.
And if a woman does need to work differently for a little while until she gets her symptoms under control, I would really invite managers to be open to that.
But it could work the other way around as well, couldn't it? So it could be that actually a woman, so if it's, you know, if they come into the office 1 day a week or 2 days a week, actually it might be that they want to come in every day. It might be that actually that's the right way to be. So it's just being open-minded to
totally
to what that is. Okay, so when it comes to, again, I'm sort of on behalf of more junior managers or less confident managers. So what in the work that you do in the organizations you work with, so you've got we're talking now about managers supporting their employees, but I personally feel that companies have a responsibility to support the managers. So those kind of things. So a junior manager, someone saying, I can't come into the office, I need to get my symptoms under control, I need to work from home for the next month. That person in the moment, they might not know, well, you know, that's not what we've been told to do. You know, I'm thinking about sort of much more junior managers, which is reality. What can businesses do? How do you work with different organizations to support businesses, to support managers, to support women?
Sure. So we support organizations in different ways. From what does a good menopause policy look like? Okay, what does an amazing one look like? So we'll work with companies to get that policy right. Having a menopause policy in place is a tick box. That does not suddenly transform you into being a good employer for menopause. So then we'll work with them on talking about how we communicate that policy and how we do a good job of our employees understanding it and how it fits into the culture of this organization. So that's kind of part one. And that's a really important part, because they need to be able to communicate very openly and outwardly what their policy is and how they want to support. And we can help that. And we work with the company and talk about their culture and see how that we can help embed that. Then I work with, one of our clients, management consultancy firm, they've had a couple of speakers come in who work in the menopause space. And then we can do a workshop where we then sit with line managers and the employees and talk about how in reality we can embed the policy and take the learnings from that speaker. So we can, work alongside other practitioners in this space. And then being able to provide content and signposting. Can I ask
a question about the speaker who comes in? Who tends to be the audience that comes in to listen to the speaker?
Do you know something? It's interesting. I can speak for our workshops. I personally deliver one. We've got someone else in our team and I also deliver one. And when I first did it, this was for a college actually. We've delivered it a couple of times. The first time I think it was 2 men in the room. And the second time I had 6 men in the room.
That's why.
And I was so made up that we have more men in the room because, we're beginning to men are, if you are a leader and you want to learn about this, go along to these workshops, go along to these talks, go and listen to understand more about the menopause. It will really help you. Yes. If not in work with your mother or your partner or your friend, or it's going to help somewhere. And so the audience really are, the one we do is managing menopause in the workplace, and so we get leaders, employee, a real mix, a real blend. But men are coming along to those workshops, which is great. But in terms of back to a question of support, it's being able to give employees signposting and resource so they know where to go. Because one of the other issues that we have with the menopause is that, sadly, no two GP appointments are the same. And you hear all over the country that a woman might go to her GP because she thinks she's struggling with symptoms of the perimenopause and is told it's not that, or you need to go on antidepressants, or you will test your blood for an illness, and it's just very difficult. So I think that in terms of support, it's helping signpost women of how to be advocates for their own health, and that's one of the things that we have in our tech, and it's really important to know where else you can go, how do you get help, and what happens. I think that's really important that companies can do that.
Great. So, and then making sure that the managers then they can signpost. So that's a really important thing, isn't it? So you get into that kind of conversation, and actually I know I can signpost you to different things.
Exactly.
Okay. Okay. We've kind of covered all the, I mean, I could talk to you for ages about this. What else could we, if there's anyone got any questions, then please jot them up. I'm trying to think if I was a manager, and the other thing actually that I think is quite interesting is menopause in women in different ethnicities, because sometimes it's spoken about less, isn't it? So it's really kind of brushed under the carpet. What if you've got somebody in your team who doesn't want to talk about anything, is kind of refusing help, you're kind of trying to sort of reach out, what I think you're going to point me back to the kind of the signposting of what the woman can do on her own, because actually because you want to empower the woman as well. That's a really key part, isn't it? So if they don't
massively you do want to empower, which is why it's important to have resources that they don't have to tell the employer about. It is important. Unfortunately, that's growing and growing. You've only got to go onto social media, or there's brilliant accounts, that on Instagram, and there are amazing books out there now. I mean, I know Davina McCall is like the kind of voice of HRT, but HRT isn't for everybody. And there are, and I think knowing where to learn more and how to get resource, which is what we're really trying to provide, is really important. Because I think that, I know, I'm going to tell my own story, that I have sat around a table with my friends at dinner, and they go, "Are you on HRT? Have you got HRT yet? Have you got HRT?" And HRT is like the thing. It's kind of, I'm in my 40s, I'm 47, don't mind sharing my age. And HRT is like the subject. And in a way, and it's only because I do what I do for a living now, I question that now and say, is it really HRT, or are there other things that you can be doing? Because we all think it's the golden bullet, it's the perfect answer, and it isn't for everybody. And also there are things you can be doing before you get into severe symptoms, or challenging symptoms, in terms of diet, exercise, self-care, how you look after yourself. So how do we educate at that point and say to women, you know what, this is your journey, you can own it, you are empowered to be an advocate for yourself, and we want to give you all these different answers and knowledge that you can look into and learn about if you want to. And I think it's that's really helpful. And in terms of the access that content, managers just taking a moment, 5 minutes to read an overview of the different types of options available to women would be really helpful. Not because I want that manager to give advice, that's not their job, but because it just gives them an awareness and helps them catch that bias when they're thinking, it's oh God, this woman's in the menopause. Let's switch that off and just be very open to the fact that in that moment she's struggling. And I think it's massive. And also, sorry, I'm on a moment now. But also,
I'm right there with you.
But also, I believe that we need to remember that nothing's permanent. You might be going through a set of symptoms, and then you get that under control, and you're in a really great flow. And some women talk about how when they've got their symptoms under control, They feel better than they've ever felt in their whole life. Let's be positive. This is an amazing opportunity.
Yeah.
So if you have got a manager who has someone on their team that is struggling, and you're thinking, oh God, this has been going on for a month and she's still, got brain fog and complaining of headaches, and, she keeps calling in sick, write it out. It's not going to be forever. And this woman is doing what she's doing, will be ideally supporting herself and doing what she needs. She doesn't want to live with those symptoms. So she'll be taking steps to make things better. And as a line manager, just be mindful not to jump into conclusions too early, or sort of labeling unconsciously that woman in the workplace, because she'll be doing what she will be doing for herself to feel better, and she will get through it. It's not permanent.
I think something you said there has really resonated with me, because I'm also 48 in that stage. Every time I sit down with my friends, the main conversation is HRT as well, and I think that it's just the way it is. But I'm learning. I'm a woman. I've known for my whole life this is coming. My mum's known for my whole life this is coming, and even I'm like, oh right, God, the menopause. I bought the Davina McCall book and I'm reading about that, and I'm like, oh, that means that, and that means that, and that's me. So I something you said there about just understanding it, like it is in peaks and flows. Sometimes you can be on absolute fire and you're producing the best work you've ever done, and then you might have an off morning or an off day or whatever, and that's cool, and then you come back the next day and it is those ups and downs. And I think for a lot of managers, they have got a responsibility to read about this and understand it, because as you said, it's not permanent, it's up and down, it's a stage. Every single woman's going to go through it with different degrees of symptom, but I do think a base level of understanding of this is page one for any kind of manager, just to understand it, because that's where I think biases are easier to forget, because if you don't understand something, you're just putting it in a box and it's just that. Whereas if you understand it, it's just part of every day, isn't it? It's
I agree.
Yeah.
And let's remember that highs and lows and ups and downs and polarities of feelings is for everybody. That is everyday life for everyone. We all have highs and lows and ups and downs on our health and our mind, on our body health, our mind health, our physical health. This is the way we all are. So it's not just a menopause problem per se.
No, it's just, absolutely. I'm completely with you. Right. Okay, so well, hopefully, so can I just one last question? So firstly, I want you to do a shameless plug about your business as well, and what businesses need to do to get that. But if they haven't got that, and we've got people on here whose big businesses aren't in a position to invest in something else, where can they go? Have you got like a sort of a free resource or something like that we can advise people to go to?
Yeah, I mean, so our Instagram account, We Are Ludo, we post just the odd bit of stats, insights, information on there, and our website, weareludo.com. But there are amazing books out there. We're actually going to put a blog up next week on a list of really great books, which will go out, and our newsletter goes out every other week, so we will put it into that. But then, I mean, I think I already did the shameless plug in my business. But what we really do is we are there to, we're all about technology for inclusion, and we are supporting HR leaders, line managers, and all employees in terms of content, signposting, and support on maternity and menopause. And then we launch our health module in the new year, which will be around longer term sickness challenges and mental health. So that's what we do. So if you want some help or just want a quick chat, or I can show you how our tech works, you can email me at elizabeth@weareludo.com.
Perfect. But anyone can sign up for your newsletter. Is that right?
Yeah, totally. Yep. And our main resource on our main page is, we put stuff up there too, and that's free, available to anybody. So please join our community.
Brilliant. Right. Well, thank you so much, Elizabeth, for your time.
Thank you.
It's an absolute joy to speak to you, and hopefully everyone listening, I think all of that's actually quite empowering. It's just knowledge and demystifying and being mindful and removing bias, and we're all different, and celebrating all of that. So thank you so much for that. Really appreciate your time, and speak soon.
Thank you for having me.
All right, take care.
Bye.
Bye.